And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the WPC podcast, the only place where you can hear mediocre advice from other programmers. Today, I am joined by the myth, the legend, Quincy Larson. I don't know if there are any myths, but we'll go with that.
Okay, yeah, we'll go with I'm not an anonymous guy.
Anonymous guy.
Where there's like literally nothing out there, but yeah, myth would probably be a stretch.
we'll create some myths. And also we have with us Phil. Say hello, Phil.
Hey guys, good to see you guys again.
I'm joined by Kevin. And the ever popular in our podcast every week, which we decided to go ahead and just bring on since he brings up most of our topics for us anyway, I have Kai, a.k.a. Jeremy.
Great to meet you.
Okay, so today we're going to kick off and change up the podcast structure a little bit and begin with our topics and news. Before we do that, let's hear a little bit about what everybody's been up to. I know that you guys have been very busy over there with the FreeCodeCamp project. Seems like you guys are on pretty much 24/7.
Well, yeah, like we're probably doing 40 or 50 hours a week.
That's crazy. Yeah, poor. I think it's Nathan. That poor dude's. He the only time he's not streaming is when he's sleeping. So what have you been up to this week? I've been watching you a little bit doing lessons, Quincy.
Yeah, so we're actively building on our infrastructure, and that's mainly what we've been streaming. But we've also streamed some pair programming on JavaScript challenges, and we've also streamed a little bit of us actually doing like functional programming. That's a really popular topic. A lot of our campers are really interested in functional programming.
Awesome. I think I saw a stream about you guys are kind of moving to React a little bit, and
yeah,
some of the transference with that. And then I also asked the question at the end, what have you learned this week? Have you done anything new?
Yeah, well, specifically about broadcasting on Twitch or just coding in general. I learned how to check out today. I learned how to check out a pull request directly and verify it right on your local machine, and then push it back up to the remote. That is kind of an involved process, and it'd be great if there were a more efficient workflow for that. I would love to see some sort of product that addresses that, but it is possible to do it just in the command line get. It's just a lot of steps.
Awesome. It seems like you guys got so much going on. It's probably pretty hard to not do something new each week with as many changes you guys are going through, as many additions as you guys are making over there. Well, let's keep going down the line. Phil, what have you been doing this week, man?
All right. Well, this week today, for me was a little bit less about programming. I, for some reason, had a hunch to try out Emacs. Those of you that have seen my previous streams know that I'm a huge Vim and Tmux user. But last week I talked to Kevin. I was like, "Hey, what's your opinion on Emacs?" And he's like, "None." Okay, well, let's make an opinion. So this week I did Emacs, and for some, I don't know why, I actually tried to use Colmac at the same time. So I threw away all of my previous programming tools and my queries layout, and my productivity went down the drain. Like literally, I could not type Hello World programs for like the first 3 days because I could not type on Colmac. And then Emacs learning curve is pretty high, I would say, just because I'm so used to JKL and hitting escape after every statement on write of code. And I don't know, Emacs was just like such a it imploded my mind. It's great. I really like it. I'm not very used to it, but my goal for the month is to become an Emacs guru. So yeah, not a lot of coding this week. Just taking care of my development environment. That's where most of my time went, and the rest of my week went on checking up on my dad, as you know, he's been feeling down under the weather the last couple of days. But yeah, that was my week in a nutshell.
Awesome. So your official opinion now on Emacs is it's enough that you want to become a guru at it?
No. To be honest, the reason I changed from Vim is great. I'm probably gonna continue using it for like everyday use, but I wanted to try out Comac just because I heard it was like mathematically better, where like keys are placed and stuff. And just using Vim with Comac was weird. Like all of the key bindings just completely broke, since Vim is like designed with query in mind. But I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna stick to Emacs, to be quite honest. Like, I understand that they try to make Emacs like your one-to go-to kind of thing, and that you can implement your other tools to work with Emacs, which is great. Like, if it works for you, that's awesome. However, for me, I like having tmux. You know, most of my stuff is command line everywhere, so like, I like just having Vim open up a file when I want to edit it, and then just close out of it, and then replace that with, I don't know, an IPython interpreter or something like that, you know. Whereas with Emacs, I feel like this is for text, you know. And I mainly think this is because I'm completely new at Emacs, you know, so I don't want to like bash out anybody that's like a die-hard Emacs fan on watching this. But yeah, I think it's just my negligence of not knowing how to work with Emacs better. But yeah, I think I'll be going back to Vim quite shortly.
Gotcha. What about the prodigal child, Kevin? Where have you been, man? What have you been doing? We haven't heard from you.
Yeah, I really haven't streamed very much. I've been working a lot, figuring out how to blow up a data center, basically. Yeah, no kidding. I utilize something like 5 terabytes of RAM.
Oh my God.
Can you go into detail about where all these terabytes went?
No.
Aw.
Actually, I'm not very happy I'm using 5 terabytes of RAM. There's memory leakage somewhere that's causing this, and it's kind of annoying.
So for those of you who don't know what Kevin does, he doesn't actually have 5 terabytes of RAM at his house. He works for Google, so he has a lot of RAM he can blow up.
You can just lose 5 terabytes of RAM. It's not a problem.
They replace 5 terabytes of RAM in a day, I'm sure.
I think I'm the leader at YouTube right now for RAM utilization.
Is that something to
Is that
be
a
proud
good
of?
RAM utilization or underutilization?
I don't know. The funny thing is, there's standards at Google that you have to follow, like coding standards-wise. It's like, oh, you have to put like 2 spaces in between each class or something like that. But they don't bat an eye when you use 5 terabytes of RAM.
Priority straight.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, they're like,
I'm the only one that's pissed about that.
we're gonna build 7 more data centers this year. That's nothing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I think they still hold the record for the world's largest data center.
Yeah.
I know that Microsoft was trying to outdo them, and yeah, Google refused that pretty much immediately.
Yep.
They were like, somebody buy 8 Walmarts and put them together.
Yeah, but no, I really haven't streamed at all. I finished my starter project. I'm working on my main project, so it's been busy. And then I'm going to NVIDIA next week for their GPU conference.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So-
Oh, you weren't here when we talked about it last week. Did you get a chance to check out that
No.
that stream we were talking about? They basically released like all cloud computing gaming, like NVIDIA Grid, where they basically have just a crap ton of Titan Z's all networked together. So that way, when you receive it at your end, it's at full blown resolution. And all the physics work out. So basically, you can game like you're on a $4,000 PC, but without actually having to own one.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. It'll also be interesting to see how I imagine they'll probably market that out as a service. So when's the NVIDIA?
Tuesday through Friday. Cool thing is my research group from the university that I worked for is coming out, so.
Nice.
Figured I'd go see him present.
There you go. There you go. All right, and what about you, Jeremy? What have you been up to?
Well, maybe the people watching don't know, but I don't really stream. I just hang out in everybody else's stream that does stream how they program. But I've this week I've mostly been working with learning Node.js. As Nate knows, I've been working on trying to build a replacement for my party queue, because I don't know if anybody's realized it, but Spotify decided to change the way their APIs work, and you can no longer have embedded applications inside their desktop Spotify application. So that's broken a lot of different kinds of apps on Spotify.
It's broken my apps, or not my apps, but the apps that I use. On my stream, I like throw out a party queue thing, and they can go to a website and they can add to my playlist right on the web. So anybody, it's kind of like what do you call it, Moobot on Twitch, where people can hit like exclamation point request and then put a YouTube video, but you have full access to the whole library, and you don't have to stream a video in the background, so that it directly adds to my Spotify account. It's really cool. But then they were like, you know what, that works really great, so we should get rid of it.
See, Nate, this is what you should start using my Tyrant DJ bot that I wrote for my stream. That it talks to Grooveshark instead of Spotify. So that update did not break anything for me. Something to consider.
So what are you using to build that, Jeremy?
Just Node.js for like the back end, and then a little bit of Angular for point on REST requests, like when the user does searches, and that's about it.
Okay, I got you.
Fancy.
Yeah, it is. Well, and I think that would, if I had to take a guess, that's all that Spotify was using on the My Party Queue thing, because it was very simple to get into. As far as my streams go, what have I been doing? I've been working all this last week. Like, I haven't been doing like one simple thing. I do that a lot on my channel, where people can actually see like real projects for multiple clients. And I don't necessarily program. Well, some cases I do. The ones that I have permissions to do it, I program right in their project. But for the most part, I'll build what I need, and then after I'm done streaming, I'll plug it in. Before that, I was doing a bunch of native to mobile VoIP and real-time data streams using WebSockets and whatnot. So that's what I've been up to. I haven't really done anything this week. Damn it. I just was thinking. I was like, man, maybe that's why my viewers have dropped. They're like, God, are you just working? Is that all you're gonna do? We're not gonna do anything cool like you did last week. But yeah, this week I'll have a bunch of new stuff I'm gonna be doing, because all of my clients don't have a whole lot going on, so I get to take a break. Like, first time, and yesterday was my first day off in like 2 months. Wow. So I've been enjoying that. Okay, so topic in news. There was a big Apple stream this last week, where not only did they talk about Apple Watch a lot, which they pointed out we discussed quite a bit in detail, but the first thing, which I actually didn't end up changing on here, was they announced they're going to have a $10,000 Apple Watch. And I don't even think it's called Apple Watch Edition. It wasn't even cleverly named. They're like, hey, we're going to slap some gold on it, and then we're going to charge $10,000 to make like 4 of them.
Yeah. Funny thing is, it's not fully gold. Like, usually you mix gold and some other metal. They found a new way to do it to cut down the amount of gold that you needed. So there's less gold than there is.
I don't know how that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is for Apple.
It is for Apple. Yep.
I'm not even mad about that watch. I'm not even mad about the watch. It's the MacBook I hate.
It's like Apple's personal version of cocaine. They're like, we'll just throw some other stuff in there so we can get about it.
Problem is, they don't have the fan base for the people to buy that watch.
Yeah.
'Cause those fan bases go elsewhere to like Rolex and things like that.
I watched a mock commercial on YouTube for it, and they had a guy that looked a lot like what's his name, the Australian dude, and he's like Apple has developed a brand new way to say, look, I have at least $10,000. That was I'll have to link it after we're done. It was really good. It was really funny.
You could buy the Titan Z's or an Apple Watch.
He's like with our new what do they call it? The gesture turning? I forgot what it's called. The glance.
Oh.
Glances. And he goes and built into the Apple Watch edition, we have a brand new glance that says, "Oh look, I remember I'm rich." Every time you turn your wrist, you will know that you have a lot of money. It was pretty good. I just can't. God, $10,000 for a watch. Although we're talking about $350, $400 like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like nobody. If you would have said you'll all be buying $400 watches in 5 years. Yeah.
I mean,
nobody would believe you.
I was buying $400 watches 15 years ago.
Well, listen, we can't all work for Google, okay?
No, I mean, I used to have a thing for like watches, so
Yeah.
I don't anymore, but
I have a feeling I will be. You know, I thought what was funny during their entire stream was they really kind of hopped around. They said it, but not directly. They were so borderline to just saying, listen, we realize that your phone's annoying and that you hate pulling it out of your pocket, because they didn't want to completely kill like their iPhone sales.
yeah.
But that's pretty much what they said is, listen, we want to make sure you never have to pull your phone out of your pocket ever again. Which I'm fine with. It's annoying. In other news, they have Apple Research was announced and is open source. And it's kind of interesting the way that they presented it. Like I kind of was like, oh, well, it sounds like HealthKit, but you know, like with HIPAA compliancy. But their message behind it made a lot of sense in the fact that researchers with Apple Watch, like researchers will be able to get the kind of data that would take them months and months and months every second. Just because they can constantly be getting data from millions of people all at once without ever having to see them. So I thought that was pretty cool. But the big thing I thought was kind of weird, definitely for Apple to do, is open source. Apple's never open sourced anything. They will sell it for as much as possible, but that's cool. Did any of you guys hear about that or watch the stream at all?
I heard about it. As far as know about it, I don't know.
Do you think it'll make any difference at all, personally?
I hope so. I mean, research-wise, I really hope it does. We'll find out.
You just don't want to sound like a dickhead.
No, I mean, I'm totally for like open source research projects. There's a one by IBM where they build a worldwide cluster based on people's machines. Mm-hmm. And what it does is your open resources, it utilizes that to do projects by like universities or people or different companies that need research.
Is this related to, or is it the folding at home? Is that what it was called?
No, I don't remember what it's called. I need to reinstall it because I got a huge score in the thing because I always left my computer open to run it.
Nice.
I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah, that's been around for a while, though.
Yeah, it's been around for years.
I know they had on the PS3. They had folding at home, which was like protein folding, and they utilized all the sleeping PlayStation 3s, and they also had an app you can install on Windows to the same thing. But it is kind of cool. I wonder if it's, in a way, it's kind of the same thing. It's just a different kind of data.
World Community Grid? Yeah, World Community Grid.
World Community Grid.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull it up here. So in other news, Unreal Engine is free. I didn't
Yeah,
realize.
that's pretty exciting.
Now, do they have is it just an engine, or do they actually have like tools and resources that come with it? Has
Isn't
anybody
it
looked at it?
API/SDK for it?
I think it's a full package. It's got a lot of.
Yeah, I think it's a full package.
It's like downloading CUDA, I think.
Well, I know that a lot of people, for the longest time, have just been resulting to using Unity, which isn't a bad engine. I've messed with it a little bit, but there never seemed like there was a whole lot of actual, like there's some other tools like it out there that exist that come with an engine, and you can program everything all in one kind of IDE. But there wasn't a whole lot that competed with it. So it seems like, for the most part, that this is going to be a really good thing for game developers.
The reason why Unity has been so, I don't know, foundational, like big in at least game development, especially among indie developers, is that there's a huge network that exists within the Unity community where, like, the biggest problem with building a game is usually the assets. I mean, there's a lot of programmers, but they don't have the people to help, build the sprites and the 3D models and all that stuff. But there's like a Unity shop where you can actually go out, you can buy music, you can buy models, you can buy textures, and just, after you've bought them, you can use them however you want and then release the game with them. So that sort of fills a gap that sometimes game developers have when they're trying to push out a product, is that they don't have, the support for all these other parts of building a game.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. And there's a lot of games that just didn't do very well, and then they kind of redid it once they had sold, a bunch of, some units and had some income coming in, and then they re-released it, and it just looked, oh my god, like a million times better. But that's because of all the money that goes into it, and if you don't have that money, definitely a resource like that can help you. Actually, yeah, I'm looking through their marketplace right now. There's a lot of stuff in here. A lot of stuff.
The big difference between Unity and Unreal, though, is the way they tend to handle the once you do release a game, a product under the engine, how much do you pay back to Unity or id for using their engine?
Yeah, and I think they said that it's free up until $3,000, and then they have a way of.
I think I can't remember which one it is. One of them, like, you pay like a flat fee or something like that, and then you don't pay a percentage. I want to say Unity is free, but then after you do go, like, you make it a production release, you pay like something like 3 to 5% in whatever profits you make or something.
Mm-hmm. Which I mean, it sounds like they're being greedy, but at the same time, though, we've had guys that have that code their own engines, and they spend weeks on these things. They stream them making their own game engines, and yeah, to make something like Unity has would cost you a hell of a lot more than 3.5% of your profits.
Yeah, definitely.
Just in resources, so that'll be cool I think it'll be really cool to see where they go from there. I've seen that they're releasing it on just a ton of platforms, so that'll be good as well. In the next news, it's a little bit has to do with Apple, but not really. They basically just announced that they are the first computer to ever have the USB-C built into their machine, but they said that they did it in collaboration. I looked into it. There's a lot of companies that have a lot of invested interest into the new USB-C type.
So they're not the first. Chrome or Google came out with the Pixel at the exact same time. So and we have double the amount of ports, which is still terrible.
Is there now? I know that there's, like with Thunderbolt, it's 20, and they're looking at going to 40 here pretty quickly. With they're at 20 right now with Thunderbolt 2, and I think they're going to 40 when they go to Thunderbolt 3. But 10 gigabytes sounds like you can do quite a bit with that as far as on the transfer speed, and it also includes the the powering like you would need with Thunderbolt. So could it be a thing where Thunderbolt was like maybe just a bit more than anybody would ever need, and this is really just a more open platform? Or
I mean, if you could replace just regular like Cat5 cables with that, it'd be great. But I mean, I hate the idea of this whole USB thing for USB-C because of the extra dongles you have to have. But it could be. We'll see where it goes.
yeah, I think if everybody really backs it, I think
Yeah.
it'll do pretty. That would be the big thing, is if everybody backed it and switched to it, and you didn't have to buy extra cables, like people just like it was just a thing that came with it. A lot of people were like, yeah, but where do I put all my extra ports? Well, it's the same amount of cables. You're just daisy chaining. It's the same thing.
I mean, I wish there was like 4 of those instead of 1 or 2 on the Chrome Pixel.
Yeah, it's to me. I'm just because my desk is always a mess with cables all over the place, like everywhere. So I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Well, now your desk will be full of dongles
Instead of cable.
and hubs.
But at least I don't have to chase down a cable to under the thing. I'll just follow it within the chain.
Yeah.
So, am I missing something, or is it completely impossible to both charge your computer and have it plugged into an external monitor?
No, it's
Without-
possible.
It is possible without the
Yeah.
dongle?
Yeah. Well,
Without
no, you have to have
the
the dongle.
So, I mean, to me, it's like that's the sort of behavior that is so ubiquitous that they should just have an extra port.
Yeah, they should. They should have like 3 extra ports. But
I mean, they could have at the very least fit one on the other side.
yeah.
Is all I'm saying. Technically, their excuse is going to be we couldn't fit 2 of them in parallel on the side because we wanted to slim down.
I mean,
But
the
they could
Pixel
put one
has-
on the other side.
So if you had like a multi-monitor setup at home with like a Mac, one of the new MacBook Airs, and like you had to charge your computers, you'd pretty much have to take it off the charger in order to be able to use multiple monitors, and then when it
No,
runs out of battery, you're like, well, I guess I was done working for
No,
today.
you have to have like 3 USB-C hubs. Daisy chained.
Probably couldn't even do more than 1 monitor though.
Yeah.
That was their internal product assessment when they were trying to figure out how much money they make. Well, we're going to lose a little bit of money in the front end, but we're going to sell so many hubs.
They aren't. They're real third-party companies. Well,
Yeah, they're going to become the next Nintendo with all those peripherals.
That's a pretty good example, yeah.
I'm totally okay with them becoming the next Nintendo and failing. I mean, almost failing.
Then they'll have to. It's so funny now that anytime that Nintendo comes out with anything remotely interesting, they make like a gigantic deal out of it. They're like, from the company which has produced so many shitty games comes this less shitty game. It's the game of the year from Nintendo.
The one first-party title this year.
I think it's more from the company that brings you the same game for 20 years in a row.
I know, but this one lets you double jump. Like,
Well, they're much better than Square Enix. It brings you the same game on every platform and the exact same graphics as the PS1 had.
oh my God. I was decently excited about some of their Square Enix, some of the stuff that they're doing this year.
I gave up on them.
Oh my God, Final Fantasy XIV literally is probably the worst MMO launch of all time.
Yeah.
Short of some guy in his garage.
Well, the Final Fantasy VII re-release.
Okay, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time.
I actually wanted to clear something up before we went on, because I mentioned the Unreal and the Unity pricing thing, and on the Twitch chat, Free Life TV had mentioned that Unity is for free, but when you earn more than $100,000, you have to buy the full version. The Unreal version 4 is free, but when you earn money, they want to earn 5%. So just to clear that up.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
make $99,000.
Yeah. Well, it is better than the
Then
previous
open source it.
pricing, which was give us money and hope you make money in return.
That's actually based on Microsoft's thing. They came out with a thing where you paid like $500 to produce for the Xbox, and that was it. So.
Do they have a dev program now for Xbox One? I don't know if they changed that at all. They didn't at first for a long time. Everybody's mad about it. No,
they did. They just never advertised it. They were stupid and was like, nah, no one wants this.
Well, I remember when it first came out, I got mine, and then I was like, holy crap, I'm going to learn me some C++ and screw around with it.
Yeah.
And I could never find it. Okay, so I wanted to expand a little bit on our last and final topic, a little bit on what we talked about last weekend, which was, how important it was, and we kind of all came to the same agreement that, if you know a lot of different areas of programming, that's fine, but if you're not a specialist in any of them, then it's really hard to get a job or make yourself a really obvious candidate for certain positions. And I think most of us that do work, full-time in programming, like, we got our job by specializing in some area. It wasn't like, I'm just going to learn everything. Because there's so much out there, you really risk being not that great at any of them.
So, but I mean, like, you're not going to get my job without knowing machine learning or parallel programming or some sort of form of that. But there are companies that you could know a little bit of everything and combine it, and like basic app development for a lot of people. So UI stuff or something like that.
Yeah, you'll definitely be on the lower. You'll be there. You'll be applying for their programmer position, like nothing else attached but the word programmer. But definitely the higher paying jobs and your ability to move up is kind of determined by where you specialize. So to expand on that though, like I don't even remember what I said. Like, how do people tell, though, if they're just being too generic in their learning and need to start focusing on a specific area?
I mean, if you're not interested, then you're not doing something you really like doing. Because I can't imagine loving all programming aspects. I mean, it'd be cool, but you don't really start to love programming until you get into one certain thing. So if it's still boring, you're not really mastering one thing.
Yeah. So if you find yourself when you keep moving on to stuff, then you start asking yourself, like, what am I actually interested in, and then put more time into that area. Okay, so we're going to move on to the reason that many viewers are going to tune into today, which is FreeCodeCamp. Is Quincy stuck?
I'm here.
You just have an amazing ability to hold a face.
I've noticed that.
On our end, you're just like your cam is stuck. There we go. You're back.
Serious.
You know, the way he was looking.
Or anything?
What?
There's not I'm not laggy or anything.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
You know, the funny thing is when he sits still like that, he looks like Vsauce.
Oh yeah.
I get that a lot.
yeah, he does actually.
Every time that your camera goes back down to the small view, like, it stays there. So I was looking at your feed the whole time, and I was like, man, he's just really unamused this whole time. Like, he's not making any facial expressions whatsoever.
So before we move on, I realized that next week, because of the conference, I have to dig up and find out if I even own a pair of like business casual stuff.
It's like, what a problem to have.
Right? I don't even know if I own any.
That strict business dress code down there at Google.
Naked.
there you go. Go with whatever you have. Well, I don't have anything, so you guys are gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I wanted to do is talk a little bit more to you, Quincy, about your guys' streaming. Now, you guys are streaming, and I kind of wanted to start there because that's most people come here because of that. Like, you guys are on like a whole lot, like a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, I may be getting the wrong impression here, but we've kind of tackled Twitch as like a casual bulk format as opposed to like a more concise, highly produced, highly polished thing. Like it's basically just us authentically like dictating our own thoughts as we sit in front of a computer and pair program, and a majority of it is pair programming. But yeah, we code a lot. Like I coded probably 70 hours a week. Nathan, aka Terakilobyte, probably codes like 90 hours a week, and he has a full-time job. Actually, I don't know how he does that.
I have no idea.
And then we also have some other people that join us, but everybody codes a lot. There are a lot of us here in San Francisco that code pretty much all day long, and it's not a big hindrance for us to fire up OBS and broadcast to the world to anybody who's interested in watching how we're building stuff, in case it can be a benefit to them.
Yeah, and to me, we've talked about this a couple times on the podcast before, just within our own experience, that our streams, we feel fill a big need that's out there. Like forever, YouTube's had, tutorial videos, but there's not a lot of place, unless you want to just get brutalized in the comments where you can just ask a question,
Yeah.
And so seeing it
Certainly
live.
if you do,
Yeah.
Certainly, if you do, there's like a looser feedback loop. The thing is, Twitch has I think like a 30 or 40-second delay. So if you ask a question, you can literally get a response within a few seconds, and because you type the question and they just kind of talk, the person who's streaming can just talk. It's very low friction for the person who's streaming to turn their attention to your question, quickly answer it as an aside, and then go back to what they're doing. So it's a perfect format for lightweight interaction between the broadcaster and the viewer, in my opinion. I love streaming, and I wish we'd started doing it sooner.
I think personally, and I don't know how you feel, but streaming's made me a better programmer. Like I am, and in some cases these guys have actually even saved me in a couple of places. But for me, like I pay attention to make sure I'm doing things the right way a lot more than I would if nobody was watching. It's not that we get doing our own thing so many times, and we get into such a routine that it's easy to just whatever.
Yeah.
And definitely, it keeps you on your toes. I don't know about you. I'm always exhausted after a stream. I'm like, oh my god.
I feel a little exhausted. I don't think Nathan feels particularly exhausted after he finishes. The other Nathan Terakilobyte. I mean, the guy just goes and goes. He was on 16 hours straight last night.
Oh my god. Yeah.
And it's not like him thrashing and stuff. I mean, he's always talking, and he's always kind of filling and interacting and stuff. He just has a really high energy level. But yeah, I agree. Like being under a microscope to some extent, and knowing that people are looking to you to exemplify best practices and to not just hack things together. Right. And also the fact that that it prevents you from thrashing because people are watching, and if you're doing something that's tedious or boring, like it's going to be painful, and you're going to see like your chat feed starts going blank or your viewership just drops because what you're doing is like extremely tedious, like going through with ESLint and like fixing the exact style of your code or so. Nobody wants to watch that. So you focus on like the high value added, like interesting work, and get that stuff done on stream. And also it keeps you moving things along. You don't go down as many rabbit holes because that rabbit holes are going to prevent you from making forward progress. And the final thing I'll say about streaming is that it's so useful to just have people watching and kind of linting for you and catching things really well. And that happened earlier today. Like, I could have spent another 5 minutes trying to track down a stack trace error, but somebody like said bump 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 line 34, and I checked it out and they were right. It's great.
That's happened a couple times. I think it was Kai that was like, I was like racking my brain, then he got into chat and he was like you're missing a comma here, and I'm like, did you just get here, or did you just like, we'll let him struggle a little bit and let him figure it out? Like, but yeah, no, they've been, it's definitely been the only times that make me chuckle a little bit is when they're like, you guys should really use this. I'm like, hold on, I'll just change the entire website right now. We get so many, and they're all good, like good suggestions, but sometimes our viewers don't necessarily understand how far we are into a project when they make suggestions like that. Yeah. So did you guys, when you guys started the whole project, did you guys start knowing you wanted to stream, or was this something you just kind of fell into?
So we initially were using Google Hangout. So there was a great online conference called Hack Summit. I think it was in like October, November, and like all of our students went there. They had like 60,000 people involved. Wow. And it was great because you heard talks from like Orion Henry, the guy that founded Heroku. Heard talks from the .NET guy. Gosh, what is his name? But he's an excellent evangelist for .NET and also does a lot of interesting stuff with Node.js and stuff. And there were just so many amazing speakers, and so many people came and interacted. The chat feed was just blowing up, and that's when I realized, man, like live is important. You can really like get away with like a lot less production time and preparation just by virtue of it being live. People will be more interested in it. Mm-hmm. The fact that it's transpiring right now makes up for so much in terms of necessary baseline of production quality and stuff like that. So we saw how big Hack Summit was, and we thought, oh man, we should do a big summit. And then like I saw kind of to some extent Hack Summit's interest like kind of plateauing and diving as the novelty was wearing off, and I thought like maybe like having like a big event that's all day long and stacks all these things in there. Maybe that's kind of like modeled after the traditional conference, but the traditional conference is something that is kind of a relic of the need to, like, you're getting all these people together, so you might as well jam in as much content as possible, mm-hmm. right? Economies of scale and scope. But with streaming, in theory, if people are available and things are not serialized to the point where you have to catch something in order to understand something else, you're constantly bringing people up to speed, things like that. I mean, you can just kind of have like a little kind of IV drip of useful information over time. So that really was what, like man, we should be putting content out in this format. And so that was probably the biggest motivator. And then we started doing live code, which was live pair programming twice a week. And originally we used Crowdcast, the same technology that Hack Summit used, but we found it really lacking, and it was just a pain to like get it set up and everything. And then we started actually streaming from using OBS on Twitch, and it just clicked, and it was so much easier. And people just discovered us through Twitch's huge, ecosystem of viewers and stuff. And like I would say that was kind of our story of how we found Twitch. We were just looking for a better crowdcast.io, and I definitely think we found it. We're going to do basically all our streaming through Twitch going forward. It's been hugely useful and fun.
It seems to me that things have really changed in Twitch the moment that they actually accepted programming as like an official kind of like game, where we actually had a place to actually say we're doing this. and not just a random whatever, because nobody's going to go to page 80 to find us. But yeah, I totally agree. And also to me, like I think for programmers, because I get a lot of guys that, and I'm sure you guys get tons of them that like are actually at work programming. And a lot of the times I hear it be like, like for the most part, programmers by nature are kind of introverted. And we kind of have to be, otherwise sitting in a corner all day at our computer, we'd go freaking crazy. But at the same time, we still want to feel like we're a part of something, like we're still, watch it, whether it's just watching somebody stream something, like you feel like you're still connected to people while still being able to get stuff done. I find a lot of people coming for that reason. But you guys started doing this for a much probably different reason than most streamers do it, and the fact that you guys are most of your streams, well, maybe not the stream itself as far as what you're actually coding, but what you are coding is for new people, and teaching others. So it's really, it kind of serves two purposes at the same time, I guess.
Right. A lot of purposes, actually. I could list them off real quick.
Sure.
First of all, is a mechanism for like kind of solidifying and demonstrating the concepts that we teach. It shows also that we kind of walk the walk. We're not just talking the talk. We actually do pair program extensively, and we actually do care about best practices in agile software development. The third thing I would say it does is it's a discovery mechanism for people that are interested in learning to code. It's another way for them to find out about FreeCodeCamp. And I would say fourth, it gives us an opportunity to kind of demonstrate like code and get people interested in our open source project, because we're actually building on that open source project probably at least half of the time that we're streaming. So it's exposure for that as well.
Man. Yeah, and you guys have such a wide, we have so many different people and so many different voices that it's really hard to actually even, I mean, like you guys, you could jump into any stream at any point during the day and see like a million different things. Right. Which is really, that's kind of unique in because you guys get posted a lot in the Watch People Code page. And that's really unique because generally it is this kind of the same continuous projects. And I know that you guys mainly deal with JavaScript, but it really shows how many different things you can actually do in JavaScript that make it so fun to watch. So, like, for yourself, like, you guys have a ton of streamers. Like, was that a requirement that you said? Was it kind of like an Office-based thing where you're like, about your flair or about your streams? We need to talk about that. Nathan over there streams 16 hours a day, and I've noticed you really haven't streamed that much recently. Is that a requirement or?
So like, we're me in my closet, the room I was in the other day with the terrible lighting, before I came out here to my couch. Like FreeCodeCamp is me on my laptop in a co-working space. We don't actually have employees or an office or anything, but we do have a lot of volunteers that help commit to our code base and actively improve it, like Nathan. These are people that we'll eventually hire once we have generated any kind of revenue or whatever. And we're going to do all that through employment, if you're curious, like Hacker School. That's a great example. Like, basically, they just help. If you want to find a job, they'll help you find a job through them. Otherwise, you'll probably be able to find your own job after you complete that program. And we're doing the same sort of thing. We don't ever charge the nonprofits, and we have no intention of ever charging the students. But so it's not actually like there's not a formal established team or an office or anything. When Nathan or Christian or Jason or any of the other people on our stream come on, they're doing it purely because they enjoy doing it.
How awesome!
And yeah. And a lot of times, like, somebody will be streaming, and we'll just kind of coordinate, like, hey, can you pass up the stream? Depends on what time of day, but like sometimes we'll kind of bargain back and forth to see who can get the stream. So it's like an incredibly positive configuration. I don't think that this could necessarily be enforced by some sort of corporate culture. It just organically arose. Like, this mutual interest in coding and letting people watch you code.
Was that kind of how it started off? Is like you were streaming and somebody was like, well, hey, you should let me stream too, and it just kind of grew from there. Is that how it all kind of came together?
Yeah, absolutely. It started off we were streaming like 1 hour a week, and it was basically just pair programming. And Nathan, who set up OBS and moved us to Twitch and all that, he is the one who basically started streaming. And he's just like, well, screw it, I'm gonna throw on some music and just talk to the people who are watching. And like we just followed his example. He was the proverbial ape that carried the potato over to the river and watched it, and like we all followed.
That's funny. That's awesome, though. That's really awesome. So how many different people do you guys currently have streaming right now? I know you have quite a few people subbing in and out.
Yeah, actively we have probably like 5 people that regularly stream. And keep in mind that we're doing a lot of this with Screen Hero. We're huge on pair programming. Like I probably use Screen Hero like 8 hours a day, and I was so sad that they got acquired by Slack. Because I really love Screen Hero as a standalone tool. So if anybody's looking for a project, we will pay good money for a Screen Hero clone or a Screen Hero clone, because it's the go-to pair programming tool. But to answer your question, I'm sorry. What was your question? One more time.
I don't remember now.
How many people? Yeah, streaming.
This is how structured our podcast is. Like we don't even remember what we were just saying.
Yeah, so we have like 5 or 6 people that regularly stream, but it's constantly in flux. We're invited. Like one of the guys, Christian, he was just hanging out, asking really informed questions and helping identify security flaws in our new app that we built. We built like a Hacker News clone for our community to use called Camper News. And he'd identified like, oh, I can do JavaScript injection here and here, and like, hey, you want to come on Screen Hero and you can help us fix it? And like we were able to pull people in from the stream. It's great. And now he broadcasts regularly, so it's great.
Awesome. It sounds like you guys are just going to continue to grow. I think as you guys have such an active, and I think a lot of it is the communication that you guys do during your streams is what gets your streamers so involved. Because I catch myself personally too many times being like, and like not saying anything, and it'll kill your stream. And you guys have done a really good job of making sure that to keep interacting with your audience, and in return they interact back and you get some good info. Like I was watching your stream and he was like, go to line 25, you guys can fix your tab issue by doing this.
Since you're talking about interaction with viewers, I'm not talking about their stream because I personally haven't seen their stream. I'm looking forward to seeing it, but as of now I haven't. However, Quincy, before this podcast, I did go ahead and check out the FreeCodeCamp, and I like how like your second challenge is to get your students into a chat room with their GitHub accounts. And I thought it was really cool because as Nate points out, like the whole interaction with your community, that you kind of push people that maybe introverts because they are programmers like Nate pointed out, and you put it in this environment where it's easy to find other people to talk with and program with, which at the end of the day is what's going to keep them motivated. So I really like what you're doing with the project, man. Keep doing what you're doing. It's great.
Yeah. I wonder how many people try to keep up with Nathan. Because I've had a couple people be like, I've refused to actually go home and quit working because you were on 9 hours later, and I was like, I wonder how many people were like, I'm not gonna quit until Nathan's done.
We probably need a don't try this at home. This guy. I mean, do you guys know any background about Nathan?
I don't.
No.
So he lives in Seoul, South Korea, and he works as a bomb disposal technician for the Army.
Oh my God.
He literally disables bombs for a living.
No wonder he's so happy on his chat. He's like, well, I didn't die yesterday. Every day's a great day when that happens.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's just like a really hardcore guy. I mean, it's rare to meet somebody with his energy level, and I'm just thrilled that he latched on to FreeCodeCamp and has been so enthusiastic about contributing. And you guys may not realize this, but he's only been coding for like 6 or 7 months.
Wow. Yeah, he's pretty good at it. He's types faster than I do, and I've been doing this for years. So you guys do actually. I think the only thing that you guys actually, other than like a logo and a link to the website, the other thing is that you guys do have like I think it's Thursdays. You have two streamers that get on that are always on at those times.
Yeah, so Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time.
Mm-hmm.
We do live pair programming.
Nice. Now for our some of our newer developers, like explain paired programming.
Right. So it's when two people code together on the same computer, and usually it's done by remote. Certainly on our channel, like we're geographically distributed. Very few people live here in San Francisco. So it's basically we use Screen Hero as our tool usually. Mm-hmm. You can use Skype or Google Hangouts or whatever, but then not both people have like mouse and keyboard. Both people having access to the mouse and keyboard is almost kind of a prerequisite for doing pair programming constructively, because you want it to be seamless. If there's any friction to like jumping in and starting typing something or fixing something, it just kind of knocks you out of your flow state. And you can achieve a flow state with another person. It's a very intimate, constructive process where communication becomes very brisk, honestly. But you don't take offense because you're both so focused on the task at hand that you don't mind that they just like said, "You're wrong. Here, do this." It's a really interesting process, and I have learned so much more because of pair programming, and I think the code quality has gone up so much as a result of pair programming. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to share the merits of pair programming with our community by actually showing pair programming in action, and then we just do JavaScript challenges. We have kind of a CoderByte, if you're familiar with like CoderByte or Code Wars or things like that. We built our own JavaScript-centric challenge engine, and it's all, basically it has automatic tests and everything, and as soon as you get the algorithm right and it's meeting all the test cases, it advances you to the next one. It's really rapid-fire algorithm scripting challenges, and they usually work on those.
Okay, gotcha. And you didn't specifically say it, so I'll just go ahead. But the main reason behind paired programming is basically to achieve the maximum efficiency within your code. It's not just one person saying, "Oh, I think this is the best way, so I'm going to do that," and then save it, and that'll just be it. It's another person saying, we would actually achieve faster results if we did it this way as well, and just both people coming to that agreement.
Right. To summarize basically what you just said there, the idea is that people are more efficient when they pair program than if they were to spend the same amount of time pairing separately, because it's a real-time code review, and because they're bouncing ideas off, and having somebody with you has the effect of keeping you on task. Facebook is just an alt-tab away, but when you have somebody sitting there who's like waiting for you to do the next keystroke or move on and create the next file and start, typing the code into it, it keeps you on task, and that is a huge motivator.
Yeah, and like Kevin actually kind of works for the Programmer's Enemy. He's on the YouTube team, which is for me is the biggest life dissolving force out there.
Yeah. I block YouTube when I start programming just so that I can like I literally had to physically block YouTube from my computer so that I don't get sidetracked. It's just a huge time sink.
I actually play YouTube videos at work and Twitch streams.
I don't trust myself that much. I don't have self-control. I know that I'll wander off to some other part of YouTube.
Funny thing is, I don't even know what development method we use.
I think it was just a couple days ago. I was literally sitting during a stream and was like trying to find out how to set like an event listener for a specific key, and then I looked up and I was like, how did I get onto music videos? Like, this was like 30 minutes later. I was like, what was I even on here for? It's bad.
I play like 10 hours of music videos every day, so it keeps me going.
So, well, and I think what's awesome about your job is people can walk by and they're like, "Oh, you're on YouTube, so you're working."
Yeah, kind of. I mean, if I'm not on the admin page, then I'm not working.
I would freaking love it. Okay, so let's talk about the actual. Well, first, I kind of want to hear a little bit about you, like what, like prior to the project, and we're going to go into the actual creation of the project. But what were you doing prior to coming up with FreeCodeCamp?
Sure. Well, a little background on myself. I'm from Oklahoma City originally.
Oh, that's why you said it.
How I identified your 405 number as Oklahoma City. That's where I grew up. Oklahoma City and Houston. And when I finished school, I did like a liberal arts degree, moved to China, did like an MBA, and worked as like an interpreter, and did like international trade stuff. Then I moved back to the States with my wife of 10 years. She and I were grad student classmates. And
where at?
What's that?
Where at? I was just curious where you went to
So
school.
Oklahoma City University actually had an international MBA program in China.
Nice.
So I went through that, and I was the only American on a campus of like 20,000. It was pretty insane.
Wow.
And there weren't even any Europeans or anything. It was just like Koreans, Chinese, and me.
Which campus?
Have you heard of Tianjin University of Finance and Economics?
No. I was at Shanghai for a while, so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
what were you doing there?
I was doing a little bit of research.
What type of research?
Google didn't offer enough on their search.
Well, no, this was when I was still in college. We worked on algorithms that was based on object deformation, so the physics behind breaking stuff, basically. So it was to measure the effect of real-life situations like hurricanes or tornadoes, or earthquakes, what it would do on buildings and like things like that. So, and I was part of a team of just me that basically did this.
Wait, a team of just you?
Team of me.
That was it.
Yeah.
I'm on Team I.
Yeah. So we basically developed almost a video game that did this and would show you the effects of natural disasters.
Wow. How cool.
Funny thing is, that's one line on my resume. Clearly, there's no details. I could put some cool stuff in it.
So you went to now, Quincy, when you were in China and you were going through the whole thing, did they like always make sure that you were front and center of everything? Like I always picture like they're like, we have to show, you know, diversity, so here's one white person.
Yeah, they'd pull me out for some various events and stuff. You can kind of get the token Westerner, or you know, that status, and get invited to a lot of parties and stuff. Chinese are extremely receptive and friendly, and you know, you wouldn't guess from their history, but they're very open to Western civilization and other countries as well, but specifically, they're really interested in America.
They're really good at trying to play basketball.
It's their number one sport.
My parents go there a couple times a year. My mom actually works for interesting enough, my mom works for a Chinese-based nonprofit. So she goes there a couple times a year. She says this kind of the saddest thing about China is their current influx of people from the country into the city, and how like all the old farmers and stuff are kind of left by their own. All the kids are now like in the cities and whatnot. It said that the cities are just tons and tons of middle-aged adults. There's hardly, like, all the old people still live in the country.
Japan in a nutshell as well.
Yeah. So from China, what like from there, where? Like,
yeah, so I
came back here to the States and.
I became a school director and ran schools, and did that in Oklahoma City, and then in Shanghai, and then ultimately in Santa Barbara, and that's how I got out here in California. And while I was working, I just would like try to automate routine workflows to free up my staff. So they wouldn't have to do really menial data entry and like the government. There are all these immigration forms, so I'd like automate aspects of doing those and automate workflows for grade tabulation and distribution and stuff like that. And I really got interested in automation. And so I ultimately decided I wanted to learn to code and not just be kind of a super user. And that's when I left that job and just basically started plowing through MOOCs and technical books trying to learn. And you know, I've blogged a lot about this. I'll be happy to share the link afterward. But basically, yeah, it was that struggle of trying to learn all these different tools and not being able to decide which tools to use and constantly. Yeah, I mean, it ties right back in, Nathan, with your questions earlier about like the need to focus. I would say that's probably the most important question a developer needs to ask him or herself is, do I want to do mobile? Do I want to do gaming? Do I want to do embedded? Do I want to do like native Windows apps? I mean, because the skill sets for all of those, there is some overlap, but you can really, I mean, you can't do everything. You have 20,000 days on Earth. You probably burned through half of those already. What are you going to really sit down and do? What do you want to be? So, FreeCodeCamp was founded on the notion that like if you really can't decide because you don't have enough information to make an informed decision, the best place to start is with web development. And once you know how to do web development, you'll understand how networks work and stuff, and you can move from there to other more specific niches. But web development, there's like a huge demand for it, and I mean to some extent, mobile development may really just become web development as processors get more powerful. There's certainly a lot of efforts in that space, like React Mobile and Cordova and stuff like that. So yeah, like basically, I wanted to help people focus so they wouldn't suffer the same issues I had. And coding alone is really demoralizing and soul crushing. Like screwing up your environment or your path or whatever, and spending 2 or 3 days not even being able to get your machine running, or thinking that you need to use Arch Linux because that's what the elite people use, and trying to start with that. You know, I definitely think that there's a lot of opportunity for just clarifying things.
Yeah, and definitely I think that you're definitely following the right track in the fact that it's your first language is not like I definitely think that you can keep focus longer by learning a language that you're really, really interested in, but more importantly, it's the fact that you just start with the language because your next one's 10 times easier. Fact is, you just get moving.
Sorry. I have a question for you then, because I kind of get the impression that when you start with web development, you almost get stuck in that field, and it's hard to move away from it, it seems.
I mean, I think you could say the same, probably to a greater extent if you started with mobile development or gaming development.
Yeah. Well, gaming development, I get you stay in gaming development, but if with machine learning and like parallel programming, for me, I could go elsewhere. I'm not stuck there. I wouldn't want to go elsewhere.
That's a really specific thing, though. You'd have to know that that's what you wanted to learn, though, when you started.
Right. I don't know. I've always kind of wondered if web development was kind of you getting stuck in that field.
Yeah, Kevin's learning experience is a little bit different. Definitely not wrong, but different. He started in C++, which
C actually.
Oh, C. So, like, he was like, "What's the hardest language to learn anywhere?"
Yeah, I just want to point out that like, if you're already like halfway in, you have like a better idea of what you should learn, and obviously like learning machine learning and learning parallel programming, these are really useful skills that I don't know very much about, but I did go to a machine learning conference in San Francisco a couple weeks ago and basically learned a little bit of Julia and these other tools, and it was really exciting. But you know, ultimately you need to focus on something, and web is like low-hanging fruit in terms of like you can get from nothing to something up on the web where people can interact with it and give you feedback in a pretty short order. And there's tons of documentation, there are tons of free courses. If you wanted to go straight into machine learning, for example, you would have to have a lot of prerequisite knowledge. In fact, if you haven't already checked out, there's this great thing called Meta Academy, and basically it's ontology of different skills that one must acquire to understand another given skill. It's really cool, and they exploded the field of machine learning, and you can like step through, like, in order to know this concept, you should first learn this concept, and it even links you to resources, and it shows you approximately how many tens of hours it will take for you to be able to do this specific thing based on its dependencies. So it's it's package management for knowledge.
Now, I bet you what actually happened on that page is they started making the tree, and then the guy just said screw it and deleted everything, and then put everything.
Or, I mean,
you have to know everything to do machine learning. They
created a machine learning bot that learned what it needed and printed it.
It could be procedurally generated. That would be pretty freaking amazing. I'd like to see them do that with mathematics.
Yeah. It also kind of helps that I get to talk with like the world's experts here in machine learning. So.
Yeah, you have kind of an unfair advantage over a lot of us.
He's like apply.
I don't know how to program AIs. Well, I don't know. I'll walk 3 cubicles down and figure it out with that guy.
Yeah,
who is the premier expert. Yeah, that's right. You guys don't use cubicles. I'll walk 3 hammocks down.
No, just open floors. Literally just walk down the desk and you'll get to some other guy.
You don't even use walkways. You just climb over the desks. Why? Because you can do anything at Google.
Right.
But it is true. I think regardless of what you choose, I mean, we could all go into, like, for instance, I get a lot of back-end guys that want to learn front-end, but their comfort zone is now set in back-end programming, that they really like. It's basic human nature that you stick with what you're comfortable with. Is I see what, you know, like the point that Kevin's getting at, as opposed to like what he did, and he chose an area that no one could ever get comfortable with ever. I'm just like
pretty much. I'd say if I ever come to you for trying to learn front end, tell me to sober up first.
Okay. No, that's the great thing about front end is you don't have to be sober to learn it. In fact, everything's
they
more
have drunk usability testing. Have you guys seen that?
No.
Google drunk usability testing. Pretty funny.
I'll have to look at that. So we're gonna. I've got to move this on, or we're gonna stick on here forever. So from there, like, you were doing it for school. So you just were like, I'm not dealing with schools anymore. I am now a programmer forever. Like that was the, like, you just made a decision. You're like, screw it. I don't know anything about programming. I'm gonna set out to learn everything, and until then, I'm just not gonna do anything.
It is very hard to learn something as complicated as software engineering or coding or whatever you want to call it after you've worked 60 hours a week and you're coming home and your wife still wants you to go and do dinner parties with her and stuff like that. I mean, like, finding the time is really quite challenging. And so that's basically what I did. I decided, like, with the existing resources, I cannot be able to get to where I can do software engineering while working a full-time job. So
the logical question, really quick.
Yeah.
How crazy did your wife think you were when you told her this?
She supported me. That's the important thing.
Wait, you're gonna quit your job and do what?
Yeah, I mean, like, I saved as much money as I could, knowing that I'd want to do something entrepreneurial at some point. And luckily, I had like a decent runway, and I'm like a really Spartan guy. Eat microwave burritos, and I just watch YouTube for fun instead of going out and like buying champagne and stuff. So my humble existence like allowed me to have a sufficient runway to learn how to code.
That is the only prerequisite to becoming a programmer is must eat microwave burritos and watch YouTube a lot. So
yeah, and ramen.
I work at Google and I still eat ramen.
I could have steak every day.
It's a really good ramen, probably, right?
It goes against my culture.
So yeah, basically like the process of me trying to learn to code and realizing how difficult it was, first of all, convinced me of two things. One, I think that you should have a clear, opinionated curriculum to follow, and there are several. There's like boot camps have their own opinionated curriculums. Everybody does the same thing. Doesn't matter where you start. You go ahead and pick up and work through everything. And then there's like my friend has a site called the Odin Project that's like Ruby specific, and it basically has a curriculum. And so we decided, like, instead of creating our own curriculum, which takes a long time, we just curate curricula from other providers like Code School, Code Academy, so long as they were free. And then the second thing you need really is positive peer pressure. And I think you get that from a community of people that are constantly checking in, like, hey, how's your project going? And if you can't get that, if you don't live in a tier 1 city like San Francisco or New York City, it's really hard to find a big enough critical mass of people that are learning to code together that you can actually create like in-person meetup groups. Now, I'm sure that you can do this, and I've heard of there being like a really good, Omaha JavaScript developer community and things like that, but it's rare, and you don't get the daily pressure that you would get from actually having a chat room where people are chatting actively, and like a forum and all these other methods of communication. So I wanted to create like a community where there was positive peer pressure for people to collaborate, and I wanted to create a mechanism of accountability rather than just say, hey, go build something you're interested in. Well, it's much better if you build something for someone else. Then you have a stakeholder who's dictating what needs to be built and keeping you motivated and on task, and you're accountable, right? So the nonprofit projects are really just a accountability mechanism more than anything, and it's a nice bonus that they serve as production code that you can put in your portfolio.
Yeah, and it seems like, because when I first started programming, I was taking Java in college, but I tried to learn a little bit of other languages by going through some of those existing sites, and that was the one thing that they were always missing is, like, after you got done with the lesson, you could, like, put in a forum a link to what you had done, and that was it. Like, people would be like, good job, or like, but it was always after the fact. You couldn't just stop and be like, I'm stuck here, somebody, show me what to do. And it seems to me like that would be, definitely if you're trying to enter a new field, that would be the biggest thing, is what happens when I get stuck and I don't have an answer, and all, like, what if I'm here for a day and I'm missing a semicolon, like there's just no support period out there for new programmers for the most part.
Stack Overflow?
I was going to say, you underestimate how good Stack Overflow is sometimes.
Yeah, but
Stack Overflow is insane.
There's a good 10,000 probably posts a day that go completely unanswered. I still have probably a good 30 on my own, and I haven't even posted that many.
Yeah, I get like 5 there unanswered. There's times at work I want to post a Stack Overflow, and it's like, wait a minute, this is IP. I can't do that.
I work for Google. What happens when they find out?
Well, that's why I don't post.
That's why you need the next company that needs to come out is like Yammer, like Stack Overflow for companies that have private repos or something like that.
There you go. That's a good idea. There's your next project right there. So as you were learning, like where did you start personally? Like, was it JavaScript and web, or?
So I started with Python, and Udacity has a really good Python curriculum. I mean, I don't know if it holds up compared to the newer curricula that are coming out. Like Coursera just announced, Stanford just announced a software engineering course that uses full stack JavaScript. I think they just announced it a few days ago. It starts in July, but it's going to be like a time box, like you have to do a weekly thing. I did that. I did Stanford's database course, which was awesome. I'm sorry, I didn't do the new one that was just announced, but I did Udacity, I did Stanford, I did some other Coursera courses, and then I read a lot of Head First O'Reilly books, and some other like pragmatic programmer books, just to understand principles of software design, and I just built some stuff and went to a lot of hackathons. I think hackathons are really useful as well. So that's kind of like, I just pieced together my own curriculum from stuff that was out there, and it worked, but it was not. It was suboptimal, and it took me a lot longer than it should have. So I didn't want people to have to like thrash like I did trying to figure out what to use. I just wanted to tell them like, hey, if you use this, this may not be the world-beating best, but it's good and it fits modularly into the scope of these other tools.
Yeah. Well, and like we see, like most of us streamers that we see every day, like there's a million routes to get to the same place.
Yeah.
If you make picking the route the hardest thing, then you're going to have kind of a hard time learning.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to jump in and ask a question because I gave Nate this particular question about what general books could a programmer would help improve, like beginning programmers, intermediate programmers that are general, not necessarily language specific, but that book can improve them as programmers. And you just sort of, Quincy, you just kind of mentioned that. I was curious if you had any particular standout
It's
choices.
actually on the topic sheet if you would have read it.
Oh, it's at the bottom.
Yes, it is. Go ahead and answer him.
Oh. Okay, well, yeah. Like I would say that like a book that I found tremendously helpful. It's not even really about programming, but I would definitely recommend anybody who's really everybody should read this book. I know that sounds really hackneyed, but there's a book called The War of Art, and it's by a novelist who, for the first 40 years of his life, drove a taxi and wanted to be a novelist. He was an aspirational novelist, but he could never actually sit down and write. He never actually did the work, and he would always find excuses to essentially procrastinate. So this book is basically about dealing with the fact that like it's hard to create stuff, and you need to force yourself to do it a lot of times. You're going to encounter situations where the next logical step is very daunting, and the most natural thing for you to do is like, hey, the new GTA game's out or whatever, and just blow it off, right? But this book is basically like strategies for coping with procrastination, and a lot of people don't want to admit that they're procrastinators. Not everybody is. I don't think Nathan Terrakilobyte is, but I personally had a big issue with procrastination. And when my dev environment like got shot, I would like do stuff to try to fix it, and then I'd find some excuse to go do something else. And this is all about like staying on point and continuing to push through what he calls the resistance, which is the invisible force that we feel that's stopping us from doing whatever it is we need to be doing at any given point to move the ball forward. So I would definitely recommend that book for both writers and for coders, because I mean, really, coding and writing are kind of similar in that you're creating something from nothing.
I agree. And we're going to have a bit of extra time on that here at the end as well, where we kind of go through each person, kind of go through their resources that they've used over the years. So let's start talking about the project itself, because we're going to like take 5 hours on this if we don't. So the specific, like, when did you come up with the specific project? Like, when did you know this is a site that I have to create?
Sure. Well, me and I had a couple friends, and we built a project called Course Forward, and it was more general purpose, like career changing. And we had things like data science and user experience research and things like that. Had a whole bunch of different careers you could choose from, and it would look at your LinkedIn profile, and it would figure out like approximately how many years you had experience with different skills and stuff like that, and it would take that into account, and then it'd look at millions of job postings. We were like scraping all these different APIs, had so much data, like basically figuring out what the job market in aggregate was looking for in an individual candidate, so we could basically diff you and your future dream job.
Wow.
And then we had literally like 36,000 technical books and online courses that we pulled down and processed similarly, and it programmatically strapped together all these different courses to build a dynamic curriculum for you that took you from wherever you were to wherever you needed to go. Now,
oh, cool.
That's pretty cool.
That sounds really cool, but nobody freaking used it. Nobody understood it or cared. And I spent like a year and a half building all that tech out and all those scrapers that were constantly going and fetching the latest information and all the natural language processing, and I just felt like a big idiot for building it because I couldn't force people to use it. You know, people who were in our exact target market who hated their job just didn't use it. And we did all this user experience research, and we did gamification, all these things to try to like stimulate people using it. And finally, I was just like, screw it. What's the simplest thing that people could learn that would be useful immediately? JavaScript.
That makes a lot of sense. Sounds like your other one was super awesome in the back end. That's one of those things where you can actually show later on, like, I made this super cool thing that nobody's heard of. And it really is like an awesome technical feat to be able to do something like that. I'm wondering why it never worked. That's great. You think it would be super useful for a lot of people.
We tried everything, man. I think it was new in too many ways, and people couldn't grok it. And also, it didn't do any one thing very well. It did all these things, but like any user would reasonably question like these algorithmically curated curricula as like, is this really sufficiently modular? Am I going to finish this book and like have any idea what this next book is actually requiring? Like the dependency chain. Are there going to be unmet dependencies along the way? And that was the problem we were originally trying to address. But yeah, I mean, if anybody's interested in going forward with it, I'd be happy because I think this is something that would be nice if it existed in the world. But I think it was either ahead of its time or it was just ill-conceived to begin with.
You know what's really interesting about that is I was in San Francisco working for a summer for a design firm down there. And while I was there, I went to a talk at Stanford, and I was really interested in the talk because the talk was specifically about iOS applications and what made one iOS application incredibly successful and another one that's almost just like it, that came out prior to it, not successful. And he specifically gave one of his own examples, which was I made two applications. One of them I did all this really crazy stuff. His app was geared at like college students or whatever, and it did all these things. And he said, what I found out through nobody ever bought it, and I made an app that cost twice as much with a whole lot less features, and it just sold like crazy. And he said it boils down to people want to define. Initially just go, this is what this application does in a single sentence. They want to categorize it. And he said, and basically he said, what I did the second time around is I made a single sentence before I started my second application. And if the features I wanted to add didn't add directly to that sentence or weren't directly a part of that statement, I didn't make it. He said, now, in later versions, I came out with all the stuff that I did on the first one, but people had already defined my app. They already knew what it did. It's just so crazy that sometimes to think that by adding more features actually can do more harm than good.
That kind of sounds very close to the dilemma of choice. Having too many choices you would think it'd be better, but it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. And so, to me, that sounds like pretty much what you had just said. That maybe it was, it was too much. Maybe if it just did one thing and then you added on,
right?
It would.
Yeah, and that was kind of the raison d'être of FreeCodeCamp. We just wanted to help people with one very specific thing and build like a general-purpose code base that could be forked. People could address machine learning, for example. That's a huge field that's growing really rapidly. Or other similar topics where you could teach in like little modules, and you could have a community, and you could have all those social functionality. I shouldn't say social, but community functionality to help people stay on track. And like a FreeCodeCamp, we have our own help chat room where people can go and ask help, and it's a lot gentler than going into hashtag Node.js or something and asking a question, and where you might get ripped for not having done sufficient research. The assumption is everybody in there is a beginner. So people by default are generally more understanding and affordant of your ignorance. So by building that kind of supportive community, I think we're kind of trying to establish a new paradigm, really, of technical school where it's completely asynchronous, it's completely free, and it's completely open source, and it's completely focused around just helping you learn something so you can go and get a job. I mean, FreeCodeCamp is extremely specific. We're not Code Academy. We're not trying to teach the world to code. We're trying to teach professionals age 25 to 45 who have already been working for a while and want to get a more technical job, or they want to get like a pivot job from a non-technical position to a more technical position. We just want to help them achieve that in the most time-efficient way.
And so from when you guys first began to now, has that angle really changed any? Have you guys modified that, or you guys have just been, this is what we do and we stay right here?
I think we got lucky and we identified a niche that was real. I mean, we get like 200 new people a day just showing up. We don't advertise or anything. They just hear about us from friends and show up, and I think we just lucked out, really. I think all that experimentation with previous, because I've always been focused on education, and specifically adult education and vocational education. I think like that tacit knowledge that I developed kind of like subtly pushed me in this direction, and I looked at all the macroeconomics and all these other considerations, and just got lucky. So I don't plan to expand the mission significantly. I don't plan to try to like pivot toward any other demographics. I think there are plenty of people in this specific demographic that can benefit from learning JavaScript.
I agree. Well, and it seems like it's a pretty that a lot of your well-known or popular sites out there never set out to take somebody's market share from them. They said, we want to serve this specific group of customers, and then they found ways to kind of capture a little bit more market share in other places. But they always started with, we're not going to make what our competitors are already doing. Like, that already exists. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
So I think it's really awesome that you guys are very specific to solving a single problem rather than just a generic site that wants to do everything. I think it works. I think it works really well. So now I want to talk a little bit about, of course, why what most people were probably wondering since we started the podcast, which was, this is kind of out of order from what have you guys built the whole site on? Are you guys using full stack JavaScript?
Yeah, absolutely. I built an early prototype in Rails, which is what I was doing previously at my job, and like did some consulting work with Rails. And I came to the conclusion that JavaScript is the future. I mean, Rails is still a healthy ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to go away any more than the PHP community is in danger of just disappearing. So many people are locked into that. But I think JavaScript is the way forward. And so I scrapped my Rails prototype, rebuilt it as my first ever Node Express app, and we started with the Hackathon starter. We didn't use mean.js or mean.io or any of that stuff. We used the Hackathon starter, which is by a guy who is now at Yahoo, but he did a great job of getting like some basic API integrations and authentication, all that stuff rolled together. So we grabbed that. I say we, but I mean it was me and my friend Berkeley and a couple other people that just volunteered because I told them, I'm going to build this, and they thought I was crazy, but they helped me because I really didn't know that much JavaScript. Like I literally was working through JavaScript algorithm challenges to improve my comprehension of how JavaScript worked. So I was very stuck in the way that Python worked or Ruby worked, and JavaScript was just slightly different. But it is a high-level scripting language, so it wasn't a huge learning curve for me. But yeah, we built it in Node.js and Express, and then we later added Angular, and now we're adding React. We kind of initially said we're going to help people learn the mean stack, but now I just call it full stack JavaScript because the stack itself is evolving. Like the options out there are evolving so rapidly, and if you know JavaScript, you can patch things in.
Yeah, it's well, and what's funny is I think it was just this last week when I was saying that if you would have told me like a year ago that the world would be moving to like a full stack JavaScript, I would have said they were crazy. But I actually tried. One of the guys on that's pretty regular on my stream. He'd been harassing me forever to do Meteor, which is like all inclusive, even though it's pretty much just it's their own version of Node. But now I completely like to me it's the only language that can actually kind of tackle full stack that's currently available. So since your first version till now, like what did you first off, like what did you guys start with on your first version out there? What were the features? What are the features that are available?
Yeah, absolutely. So I literally, in keeping with like Agile, I wanted to ship as quickly as possible and just get something up. So it was practically a static site. Like it had authentication, but there was nothing to track. Basically, you were signed in, and like I didn't even set it up to where it would write like that you completed challenges. And one of the first things I did was I took all the good free resources and I just dumped them into a big list. Like here are different courses you should work through, and then when you're done, like take these challenges. And there were like 5 challenges, like build, a static blog or whatever, and they were very vague, and they were intentionally open-ended, and I thought that would be a good approach, like, here are the right resources, go. But it turns out that people really do prefer slightly more hand-holding modules, and those modules started as, like, do Code Academy's, JavaScript track, and they broke down later to 30 to 120-minute modules, and there were, like, 60 of them instead of 10, and it's just very step by step. Okay, now do this section on loops. Now do Stanford's CS 101 course intro chapter, and so we basically just broke things down to smaller bits, and we were using CoderByte, and CoderByte kind of sucks. Honestly, they don't maintain it very well, and a lot of the challenges are like repetitive. Like they'll literally just give you the same challenge, and we would tweet at the guy, and he wouldn't respond, or he'd just say he was going to do something, never do anything. So we're like, well, let's just build our own CoderByte. So we did, and we built it using this open JavaScript library called CodeMirror, and that just really took off. And now, when I read through my tweet feed, a lot of people are tweeting that they've completed this bonfire or that bonfire, and now we've built our own courseware to replace Code Academy. So we're gradually, building out all these different things that we initially used vendors for.
I think that's really interesting that you guys did it that way, mainly because so many of these sites that exist that have their own courseware and started with their own courseware, it's almost like they were so stuck on having their own name on everything that you do that they would, even if it wasn't the best lesson ever, at least it has our brand on it, to where the user experience was less important than them putting their own name on it.
Yeah. I mean, I can see where they're coming from. They have control over it. If you have your own content, you can go in and fix it if it breaks. You have an intimate knowledge of how it works, and you can explain it, because people constantly ask us questions about General Assembly Dash, which we're currently using for our HTML, CSS stuff. It's the first series of challenges you do is General Assembly's Dash, because I think it's really pretty solid for what it is, but to my knowledge, it's not really actively maintained. It was commissioned by General Assembly, and once it was built, it's just here you go. So there are all kinds of issues with it, and we just have to apologize for them. We can't really modify them. So to some extent, they're not invented here, which is the syndrome that all of you are probably familiar with. We wanted to avoid that to the extent possible, because we didn't want to spend time working on stuff that didn't matter. We wanted to work on stuff that was high impact, that we could provide, our core differentiator. So we resisted not invented here, but I can see its merits to some extent.
Yeah, but it sounds like it served you some good, having looked at all the courses out there and learned from them, and then built your own after the fact. You've kind of had a chance to look out there and see what's working and what doesn't.
Yeah.
As opposed to just going, this is the course I'm making, and if you don't like it, then whatever. But very cool. So what features have you guys? Obviously, you guys have built a ton of features since, but what can people look for now on your site that you guys have added since?
So we just added Camper News. Like I said, that's our Hacker News clone, and it's a really cool way to share stories and comment on stories. It's basically Reddit. We built it in about 5 days. we're making it into a one-page app as we move to React and move our entire app over to React and Loopback, which is a powerful tool that basically makes your entire like data model an API. So you can just hit API routes to get data, and so we're Camper News is a big exciting thing. We're building our own courseware, which includes like a functional programming, design patterns, and a whole lot of more esoteric JavaScript stuff. And that's going to be approximately 100 hours worth of interactive coursework. It's not videos; it's literally you in a prompt with heavily designed and thought out step by step. It's basically a step-by-step tour of JavaScript's like SDK or API or whatever you want to call it, and like all the different tools that strap in there. And we're using Lambda, for example, which is a powerful functional library, and some stuff like that. So basically, we're building an entire curriculum that will walk you in 100 hours from hello world with HTML, and it's all rendered in like an iframe like Code Academy is, all the way up to like I am doing design patterns, that sort of stuff. That's our goal, and that'll take a lot of work, but we're going to iteratively introduce that stuff, and we'll basically knock out a given provider. Like we'll knock out GA dash and put in our content first, and then we'll A/B to see whether people actually like our content or whether we need to go back to the drawing board. But efficacy is the important thing. If you disentangle your pride and everything, and you just look at what produces the best outcome for your learners, that's usually what you want to do. So we're building the courseware, and then we're revamping how we deal with nonprofits, and we're making it to where anybody can access like these kind of nice show views of the nonprofits' details, and so we're emphasizing a lot of that stuff. And then some other initiatives that are going on right now are like getting VoIP and getting everything synced up with the server to where you can pair program within FreeCodeCamp without having to use an external tool. We took a lot of inspiration from Together.js, which is Mozilla's now shut down library that basically allowed for VoIP and messaging and like bringing people from one page to another within your app. It's really cool. It's abandonware though, and we didn't want to maintain it, so we're building our own lighter weight version that specifically addresses our needs.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Sounds like you guys are getting into a ton of areas I bet you a couple years ago you didn't know you'd be in.
Yeah.
You're like,
absolutely.
I bet you when you started, you're like, well, actually, eventually you're going to be building VoIP. You'd be like, what? But that's awesome. And at the same time, though, it expresses, I think, one of the biggest things one of the biggest cancers I think that's within development, within our developer society today, which is, I think, well, specifically in web, Kevin doesn't have this problem because nobody gives him anything to get started. But for a lot of web developers, one of the biggest problems is, oh, I need to do this. Hold on, let me find a library to use. And if somebody doesn't use it, well, it's not getting done. Rather than let's find something close and let's make it.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that you're actually walking that walk, in front of the people that are coming to you. That it's okay to make your own stuff if you need it. Like you can do it if you need to.
Yeah, there was a great blog post like not invented here or fear of not invented here or something. I can link to it later, but it was a really good post. At some point after you've done your due diligence, it's just like in academics. If you've done the research and nobody's done the research you need to do, well, you're going to have to start writing grants and do it yourself. But you'd be a fool to replicate research. You need to be sure that you do your literature review before you set out to do anything that's labor intensive, like writing an entire library.
Yeah. Well, and you find a lot of developers too that even on small things they'll be like, well, this library that I use, I updated it, and now it has a bug from their GitHub. So I guess I'm just going to switch to something completely different until they fix that bug. It's like, myself, I am extremely guilty of this. Like go find the bug. Like you're a developer too. Like you know how to do this. But I think it's really cool that you guys are it gets to a point where you have to start developing your own things. You can't just copy and paste libraries your entire life, you know.
Yeah.
But speaking of nonprofit segue, that's one thing that we haven't touched on. Like, I know that a good majority of your site is all about teaching developers, but you guys are taking the extra step of getting them actual experience by doing nonprofits. How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So we call them nonprofit projects, and basically the first 100 hours or so of FreeCodeCamp is working through the courseware, and then the next 100 or the next 900 hours is building projects for nonprofits. It's experiential learning, and the way we do it is we basically have an open invite to nonprofits who need anything code related done. That's not like WordPress or whatever, but like actually building modern web apps, like a donation. CRM or a CMS for their different content, or perhaps like a social network for their students at their school or wherever, like more complex but not like super duper complex, and not stuff that they could just buy, right? Like if they could just get like some solution, like I'll go to Bitnami and install a discourse instance for you. I don't need to build a forum from scratch for you. Those kinds of things. But like we vet these projects, and if we find a project that seems to have a stakeholder that has a clear idea of what he or she wants and already has like an existing beneficiary of his or her actions, then we're happy to help them build that. And so far we've started about 10 projects, and they're coming along, and we're hoping some of them will finish in the next few weeks. But like Save a Child's Heart, they wanted a special UI where like they could have like a wall of hearts, and whenever you donated, you could put a name on a heart, and you could pull out the heart, and it'd like blow up, and you could like have a lot of other information on it and stuff. And they wanted it to like jive with their API and write everything back to where it needed to be, and so we did all that stuff, and that should be out soon. And that's just an example of a nonprofit that that's money they would have spent on administration that they can now spend on actually doing what they do. Helping people, helping children receive heart donations or heart surgery.
Do you actually have quite a bit of nonprofits like lining up projects for your students?
We have like 25 that we've approved, and we get like maybe 5 or 10, maybe 15 a month that they go through our vetting process and are actually like good fits. And a lot of it comes down to the stakeholder. We want one person who has like some level of technological savvy who can serve as kind of a product manager, who understands the end users, understands the business argument for this tool to exist.
Definitely not a case where they're like, I need a website. Well, what do you need? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because you are basically putting somebody in their hands that doesn't know either and could end up with a very poor outcome if not guided.
Absolutely, and it's always 2 programmers, and we always encourage them to pair. 2, I think, is the magic number for like small teams getting things done, and that's what Pivotal and Thoughtbot and a lot of these agile consultancies use. They do pair programming, and so it's two coders and 1 stakeholder, and the 3 of them meet with either me or Michael Johnson, who's our nonprofit coordinator in Washington D.C., and we all meet in Gitter, or we do a go-to meeting for the initial meeting, kind of like set expectations and get to know one another, and then it's all in Gitter, which is GitHub-based IRC, and it's an awesome tool. I just want to plug it real quick. We use it for all our chat needs. It's great. And so we'll have a Gitter chat, and that way there's like a log of everything that's said, and then we use Trello for like the task management, and we're really stumbling through and figuring out a lot of stuff as we go. I've talked to a lot of people at like nonprofit organizations that do these kinds of things regularly and try to glean as much insight as I can to avoid making the common mistakes in dealing with nonprofits.
So do you guys verify that they are actually nonprofits and not like somebody?
Absolutely. I mean, if you haven't heard of them, there's a decent chance we may not work with them. Like we like to work with more established nonprofits that have like a big presence, a big obvious presence, like thousands of followers on Twitter, and you Google them and they're like the first thing that comes up and all that stuff. We're really not interested in helping startups at this point, frankly, because they don't have an established need, and we don't want our campers to build something that is not going to be used. The worst thing that could happen is for them to put their heart and soul into building a project, thinking it's going to go into production, and the people are actually going to be benefiting from using it, and for it to like, oh, I decided to pivot my startup, dude, you know? Mm-hmm. So we definitely don't want to put our campers in that sort of situation. We want them to have production code that they can maintain, that they can point to on their portfolio that'll help them get a job.
And that's awesome. Sounds like some of that's coming from personal experience. So where do you guys see the project going from here? It seems like from everything you've said, you guys are just basically want to just keep improving the system that you've already built and kind of work a more streamlined way of dealing with nonprofits. Is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, we're only 150 days in.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like, we don't really know, like, what lies around the future. There are plenty of thought experiments we can do, but really, like, I see something that's working, which is getting people in chat and getting them talking and getting them sharing things on CodePen and stuff like that. Like, whenever we see something that seems to be working and that's low resistance, we try to implement it and, like, encourage that. Like, a lot of campers want to build a time scheduling tool that basically makes it easier for people in different time zones to figure out when is best to meet. And there are a lot of tools out there, but none that are specifically centered around different time zones and, like, you know, allow for a range of availability and then, like, hone in on the exact optimal time for the largest amount of people involved in that meeting. You know, like that's a tool that needs to exist, that doesn't seem to exist, that our campers are just kind of taking charge on. And those are the kinds of activities we want to stimulate. We want FreeCodeCamp to kind of be like a big dev shop where the currency is goodwill, kind of like open source as a whole. We want it to be like a mini kind of starting out with Legos open source rather than starting out with, you know, cinder blocks and mortar and stuff.
How awesome! So that brings me to the okay. I'm just making sure I didn't skip anything major here. But so that brings me to the big question of this is if I'm a new developer and now I've looked through your site, like, people just sign up and get, like, just go, or what's the best way for them to really kind of get involved with what you're doing?
Right. We're still, like, analyzing user behavior, and we track everything, and we're doing some A/B testing and stuff like that, but it's not that sophisticated yet. But basically, the operating theory is you show up at FreeCodeCamp, you start working through the challenges, you go into the chat room, you hang out in the chat room, you feel positive extrinsic motivation to continue going. You know, and a majority of our campers have kids, or they have day jobs, or they're in grad school or whatever, and they're busy. That's like the thing that unifies everybody. Everybody's stretched for time and cash. Like, we wanted to make it completely accessible, browser-based, and free. And like, you just slam through the challenges, which are constantly evolving, and we're gonna, like, basically get feedback from doing these nonprofit projects. I'm personally involved in, like, project management on them, and I can see what the gaps in people's knowledge are and kind of pass those back to the very beginning of the curriculum to, like, try to, it's like sending information back in time, basically. You know, beware of the Ides of March. Beware of the, you know, Code School Angular course. It's going to confuse you, you know, stuff like that. So, yeah, basically that, like, it's evolving, but our goal is clear. We just want people to be job ready as an entry-level software engineer, or able to move into a technical role in finance or whatever field they're already in.
Awesome. So do you guys ever? Well, obviously that you know, like you mentioned before, the JavaScript is going to eventually move to full stack. Do you guys? Is that one of the requirements when you guys work with the nonprofits? Is that they're already working within a full stack environment, or do you guys transition them, or how does that work?
What we like to do is we just like to build our own app and have an API interface with whatever they have existing. So if we can pass session tokens and stuff like that back, great. Then they have this nice standalone tool that's They didn't have to compromise their existing infrastructure or anything like that. They just it's as easy as like plugging it in, and that way, if they've already got like a lot of companies already have a Squarespace site or a Wix site, or they've got a WordPress site, and it's quite evolved, and they spend a lot of time and energy on it, and we just like subdomain like donation manager dot saveachildsheart.com or whatever.
Yeah.
We'll figure out a way to work it in to where it doesn't interfere with their existing infrastructure. As far as full stack, a lot of the solutions we're building are basically just like practically static sites with some dynamism. It just depends. Like we like to start with simple projects that don't involve like a lot of like back-end heavy stuff, because I think it's easier to learn front end because it's more obvious. Like the things that you're working with are more tangible. Like you're working with DOM elements and stuff like that. Whereas if you're doing back end, you're working with a lot of more abstract stuff, and you have to write a lot of tests to like make sure you know the state of a system. It's not as visual of a process. So I would argue that like starting with mostly HTML, CSS, jQuery type things first, and then moving on to more complex things, and whatever technology they're comfortable with, as long as it's full stack JavaScript, is fine with me. Like the campers. Like we don't want to dictate what specific libraries they use or anything like that. Whatever works, is kind of our philosophy. But it's not completely laissez-faire. It has to be robust and secure, and it has to be conventional enough that this nonprofit could have outside developers maintain the app without them having to just say, screw it, I'm going to scrap this and build from scratch. Because that's not what anybody wants to happen with the code they just wrote a year or two ago, for it to be scrapped in favor of something that's newer and easier to maintain.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, and I think that was the main reason why I asked, is because I figured that it would be, in some cases, like asking them to even like a person who just learned JavaScript, even if they're quite good at it now, would be like you throw them into an existing environment and tell them they have to deal with it, like they probably wouldn't even know where to start. So it's really cool that you guys are doing it that way. It solves a much needed problem. And it's funny because like I think it was last week's podcast I said that I should write Squarespace or Whisk like a thank you note because of how much business they've brought me by offering their very limited template builder-ish kind of thing.
It's true. I mean, these tools aren't the enemy for developers. Like, basically, they're just making our jobs easier because, like, we don't have to write the same CRUD app a million times. We can move on to, like, the more exciting stuff.
Yeah, and it's nice that you guys have built some kind of, because it sounds like if a camper's gotten far enough to actually be dealing with a nonprofit at that point, they've already put in quite a bit of work, that they appreciate the opportunity that's being handed, but at the same time, it's really awesome that you guys still have somebody they can go back to, that's kind of like their chat room, what they experience with the chat room, to be like, okay, I'm lost. Because unfortunately, that's how the real world is, though. It's like, even at your first job, they're going to be like, good luck, here's what you have to do today. Yeah. Hopefully somebody has enough time to explain it to you.
Hey, dealing with ambiguity is like the killer app of the 21st century.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry, real quick. This may restart on me. Windows keeps thinking right now is the perfect time to restart.
It's okay. I think I'm going to save the section that we have for next time. I was really hoping to get to it. We've just been going for so long now. It's like 2 hours, but I had a noob section, since that's kind of your specialty at this point.
Yeah, I'd love to come back I feel bad because I've been talking about myself the whole time. In FreeCodeCamp, I want to learn more about you guys and your projects, and I'm definitely going to tune into your streams more.
We would love to have you. Speaking of which, right before we go, tomorrow we are having a conference, WPC conference, where you can hear all sorts of talks on various subjects. I personally am doing one on front-end design, which is my specialty in life because I hate everything complicated in code. No, it's not that. But yeah, so if you're listening to this and you've ever wondered about multiple areas and kind of hearing more detailed detailed discussion about specific opportunities in our field, I definitely would recommend you jump onto some of the talks. We're gonna have, they're kind of all over the place. We've got oh my gosh, there's a whole list of them on the Watch People Code subreddit.
They are still taking suggestions for them. If anybody that's watching the podcast right now has any suggestions as to what kind of talks you might want to see tomorrow, you can log in to the subreddit and post your suggestions there. A lot of people right now, a lot of the streamers want to post something, but they're not exactly sure what the community wants to see. So if you guys could really help us out by going there and just posting, whatever you guys want to see for tomorrow's conferences, that would really be great.
I agree. And also, if you are an expert in a specific area of your area of programming, feel free to jump on there. Let us know that you want to do a talk. All you got to do is basically just put it in a comment what you want to talk about and what time, and that's it. You're signed up. For those of you who are going to be doing a talk tomorrow and will not think to do so, make sure that you actually post your stream, because we are not going to be doing it for you. Other than that, Monday we're doing something different. I just thought I'd throw it out there. Alex and I are actually going to be doing a dual stream. It's kind of like pairing, but he's going to be doing back-end programming. I'm going to be simultaneously doing front-end design for the brand new Watch People Code website. So if you're kind of interested in seeing how a front-end and back-end designer might work together, that would be a good time to do so. That will be happening Monday, 8 a.m. Central Time to, I think, 1 or 2. Other than that, I think we've gotten through a lot. Man, we should have you back at some point, because there's a lot of stuff I just skip over. We weren't going to get through it. But yeah, I definitely would love to have you back. Other than that, for all of you that are tuning in today and are wondering if I'm ever actually going to make the iTunes feed for the podcast, that's actually the reason that we are going to be streaming on Monday, is to get all the podcast stuff up onto the site, as well as getting it into Apple's gigantic database of podcasts. So you can expect it, I would say, probably by the latest by Tuesday, and we will include episode 1, 2, 3, and 4. So make sure to look for us, WPC Podcast, on iTunes. Other than that, does anybody have anything else?
Well, just the usual outro. I want to thank Quincy Larson for joining us today. It was really great listening to all the stuff he had to share with us. Please, guys, check his project out. He's doing a lot of good. It is FreeCodeCamp.com, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
you can also find him at Twitch at / at FreeCodeCamp. They are on 24/7. In worst case scenario, you'll find Nathan. Overly caffeinated and more than likely watching crazy YouTube videos, as I found him as he was getting off this morning. Jeremy, thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, no problem.
We've been wanting you on for a couple weeks now, since you are like the ultimate source for the last couple weeks of being the topic guy.
Yeah, I mean, the Twitch chat room has been kind of boring now with them in here.
We might need to kick you off so that it goes back. No, I'm just playing.
I'll post all my questions in there.
I mean, I may stream in like 30 minutes, so feel free to join mine.
There we go. Yeah, that's something I haven't seen in a little while, is Kevin streaming. You can get on there, buddy. If you want to see really complicated stuff that'll absolutely just screw your mind up the rest of the night, watch Kevin code.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing right after this a high throughput pattern matching algorithm to compare multiple images together. So
you literally need an interpreter, man, like a guy that stands behind you that says it in plain English.
Picture, same.
Some guy that's drawing pictures, like really overly simplistic pictures.
Oh, that sounds cool, actually.
Kevin definitely is the lower level language guy. One of the few. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. We'll catch you guys. We've pretty much decided 8 o'clock every single Saturday night. You can see our live stream. Our iTunes will be up every single week on either Monday or Tuesday. For those of you guys that find us on the phoneses of the world. So, other than that, you guys take care.
Cheers.
Later, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Yep.